Hello, Manchester, Auburn, Hooksett. This is the progress report for this, I guess is the second Wednesday in February. And Valentine's Day is up very soon. Don't forget your Valentines, folks. And we are ready to go with this edition of the progress report. Happy to welcome my great good friend, Mike Farley, who's joining us again via Skype. I hope the day come, Mike, when you feel comfortable coming in and joining me right here.
As soon as I can get my shot, I will be down there, man.
Yeah, me too. My shot isn't until March 31st. I'm kind of bummed about that.
Well, I'm looking at somewhere near October at this rate. But,
well, that's the penalty of being youngster. You have to put up with stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm feeling every minute of that youngster stuff.
But I am really, really pleased tonight here in mid-February as we, face the first real winter month we've had. We didn't have much of a winter till February, and then it kind of came in. But I am really pleased to have today one of the people I think is one of the real important people in New Hampshire, and that's the guy I like to call Mr. Democrat. And I can't think anybody else could be called Mr. Democrat than the Honorable Ray Buckley, who's been chairman of the Democratic State Committee. When were you first elected chairman, Ray?
March 24th, 2007.
And I was there. It was at St. Anselm's.
Exactly.
I was happy to vote for you for chair. Raymond, I know you're not a perfect person. I think you may even agree with that. But I know you've been a tremendous chair of the Democratic Party of New Hampshire. What you've accomplished over your years is just unbelievable. And here we are as we go into this interesting year of that we're in now, and so many things are happening. The second impeachment trial in the history of the United States for one president. One president never did succeed in winning any popular vote anywhere. Mm-hmm. Never ran for office for anything until he ran for president when he did not get the popular vote, and certainly didn't get it this last time.
Never hit 50% approval rating.
What?
Never even hit a 50% approval rating.
Never hit a 50% approval rating. Yep. Which Ray's friend, I think I can call him a friend, our current president of the United States, has done really good on that. I mean, he's off to
21 days.
20. It's a terrific start. You would agree, Ray, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, very proud.
But Raymond, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I was just mentioning that he never even got above a 50% approval rating.
Never got to 50%. Never mind above it. It's just astonishing. Who would have ever thought we'd see our democracy in the parlous state it is right now? And I kind of want to ask Raymond about that. But Raymond, I want to talk to you about. For the first time in a long, long time, you have a challenger for your leadership in this committee. I have a feeling that you're not going to be upended. I certainly hope not. I believe you've earned the support of New Hampshire Democrats up and down the line, because when you became the Democratic chairman, most of us were just used to being minorities, right? We were used to being minorities.
We didn't even dream.
We didn't dream.
Didn't dream.
And I think what you've accomplished is absolutely astonishing. You've turned this state into the point where, tell me if I'm wrong, the number one registration by numbers is independents. Mm-hmm. Number two is the Democrats.
Correct.
And number three is the Republicans.
We done there.
You must feel really good about that, and I hope you do. I mean, you have achieved, unbelievable success. And yet, the last election was kind of a mixed thing. You had great success with the federal offices. All our federal officials, including our Boston Senator, Senator Jean Shaheen, does she not get better with every election?
Isn't it amazing?
She's just amazing. We are so fortunate to have her. And our two congressional people, Chris Pappas and Annie Custer. And
Bob,
yet we lost the Executive Council, we lost the State Senate, we lost the House. And a lot of people saying, Ray, you didn't help us enough on that. Would you like to respond to that?
Sure. If you do a check mark, I guess, of the times over the last 15 years, president, you write a column of governor, and you do U.S. Senate, 1 seat, 2 seats. Congress 1, Congress 2, majority on the council, executive council, and House. And you get a dot for each time you get the majority or you win one of the elections. If you do that, in the last 15 years, Bob and Mike, New Hampshire Democrats have won 66% of the elections. I mean,
Smiling. I'm smiling.
if you did that in the 80s, it would be like 2%. You know, there was just, we
I
didn't
can
win a
remember,
single.
Bob, where we would be happy if if we could have one congressman be a Democrat.
Yeah.
Or if we got a senator. Holy cow! If we had a Democratic senator, that was
It did
and we
happen,
got-
but it was like a meteor landing in, Grenier Field. It's
That's
just
a
a real
grand
point.
slam now. I totally agree with what Raymond's saying.
Yeah.
So think about the other day, in the middle of the night, when Vice President Kamala Harris went in to cast the deciding vote. The reason she had the ability of casting that deciding vote and supporting that proposal was because New Hampshire sent 2 Democrats. And every single time something
Let's mention my wife's home state of Georgia.
Yes, but if
But, you're
without,
absolutely right. You're
without
absolutely
New
right.
Hampshire,
But without New
and
Hampshire, there's no Georgia.
yep, I mean, you look at how close Obamacare was first passed,
Right.
and Jeanne Shaheen was there. And then when the repeal came, Maggie Hassan and Jeanne Shaheen, if it weren't for the 2 of them, it also was the one. So
Yeah, it wasn't just
30
John McCain at
yeah,
2 a.m. with his thumbs
right,
down.
30 million people's health care was saved by the work of New Hampshire Democrats in making sure that we had 2 great senators. Jeanne Shaheen's victory in November made history in so many things. No person in New Hampshire history has won more statewide elections than Jeanne Shaheen after this victory.
Yeah.
She received more votes than any other candidate for U.S. Senate in New Hampshire history. She is the first Democrat in New Hampshire history to be elected to 3 full U.S. Senate terms.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's an impressive thing.
Because Tom McIntyre was elected for a short term,
Yeah.
then 2 other terms. Go on, and what she's accomplished in Washington, and what I saw. I don't know if you saw her on the floor of the House the other day fighting for women's reproductive rights, and boy, she had that Jeanne Shaheen look. And I said, I wouldn't want to be whatever senator she's lecturing right now, but she really let him have it. It's about the gag rule internationally, where you can't even encourage women to go get health care, never mind choice. Look at, in any other given year, keeping the congressional delegation for 3 elections in a row would be historic, or Joe Biden winning New Hampshire by the largest vote of any Democratic candidate or any presidential candidate, actually.
Really?
Yep.
He did better than John F. Kennedy in it?
With the numbers of people actually voting, because you can see the graph that win or lose, Democrats' share of the vote keeps going up.
Yeah.
Independents we don't always get for every race, but it is becoming a blue state. And I'll give you something interesting. So in 1986, I was first elected to the House to represent Ward 8, our beautiful Ward 8, Mr. Farley.
Mr. Farley.
Good job you did.
And the average house size, New Hampshire House in the 1980s, was 128. That was the average. So that means sometimes there was 100, sometimes there might have been 140.
You
but
never had the privilege of being in a majority in the New Hampshire
128.
House.
In the 1990s, it was 136. In the 2000s, it was 168. And so we all remember in 2010 when we did this wicked wipeout of Democrats. The Republicans had a 2-to-1 majority in the House, the Senate, and so they gerrymandered the state to rig it to make sure Democrats never had the majority. Well, we got the majority twice, and our average caucus size was 196.
Imagine that.
So we have gone up 70.
Hold on just a minute. We got a call. Let's see who our caller is.
No call.
No call. Okay,
No calls.
sorry. We had one. We don't have one. Go ahead.
So the progress that we've made is phenomenal. Obviously, nobody was more devastated on election night when we lost by a very slim margin. A couple thousand votes, we would have kept the state Senate majority. And we won 187 votes, the largest minority caucus in New Hampshire history. Nobody had ever been that close. And so and as you know, having served there all those years, 187 is enough to stop or pass just about anything if you all are there and show up. And I think that's why there's such disgusting games being played with COVID, because of the our Democratic leader Randy Cushing, everyone is very aware, is in the battling cancer, and
Very serious.
so he cannot. COVID could kill him if he catches COVID, and they're insisting on these in-person gatherings, and it's just cruel. It's just disgusting.
What in-person gatherings? You mean for the leadership?
For the legislature, that they're going to now meet in Bedford in one of that sports arena thing.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, well, it's 6 feet
Well-
away, but that's if
But
everyone
they
is.
claim they haven't adopted a rule that would permit them to do what the Supreme Court said they could do, to meet remotely. Why haven't they done that?
Exactly, because they know that when push comes to shove, we'll start winning. And when you've got 40 or so members of the Republican Party not wearing a mask, 6 feet away doesn't mean anything. If you've got 40 people walking around, fooling and joking around, and it is just despicable. Just the other, yesterday, a Republican congressman died of COVID.
That's right, from Texas, I believe.
There's about 24 Republican office holders, state representatives, state senators, our own speaker died of COVID, but somehow they don't believe that it exists.
Well, I want to give you one particular, because my old hometown is Goffstown, and there's a Republican representative there named Fred Plett. And I have it from a very reliable source that when he was campaigning, I think in the primary election at whatever, Mountain View School, wherever it was, he was not wearing a mask. He was going around offering to shake hands with people, including my good friend who was a former chair of the Goffstown Democratic Committee. And she challenged him on. He said, I just don't believe in that. And he was many weeks in the, whichever of the hospitals, I think it was Elliott, intubated, and then in rehab. I mean, come on.
And who ends up paying? All of us end up paying the price
Yeah.
of that sort of health care
Yeah.
bill. If he has insurance,
Yeah.
that means our rates all went up. It is. They're taking hospital beds away from people that have
Yeah.
legitimate illnesses that they could have if they'd just simply been careful. And it's really a shame. But we're looking at 2022. I'm feeling really excited. Feeling excited about the city elections. Hopefully, we've got a great candidate for alderman in Ward 8. Mike, you still here?
Raymond and I have to thank you for supporting my good friend Mike Farley last time, which you did in a very meaningful way. And Mike,
Certainly appreciate
I mean,
it,
it's going to be a tough sell, I know, but
Mike, the key
I-
is to
I-
keep
I-
running.
I-
Eventually, you'll wear the voters down. I'm telling
yeah,
you.
that's the thing I've learned. There's no dishonor in losing an election. The thing is, you get a little bit of notoriety for that, presumably not notoriety, but positive, and you just get up and go again.
Yep.
In New Hampshire, we always have another election coming
I'm
on.
not so sure I need, Bob.
What? What?
I'm not so sure I need that kind of notoriety. I know any kind of publicity is supposedly good publicity, but I don't know. We'll talk about it another time.
I'm ready to support you. I'm ready, and apparently
I've got my
the
checkbook
the
out.
honorable Democratic chairman, who I think will continue to be, is ready too.
The best revenge is revenge.
So, why do you hate me so?
I love that.
Let's talk about something else. I'm blushing,
Oh, Mike, it's so much fun to talk with you about stuff like this. So, Raymond, you've got some pushback. We did extremely well in the federal election level this time, thank God. We didn't do so well with the Executive Council and the House and the Senate. And I mean, what do you have to say to people who say, why didn't you? Should you have done more for the down ticket race?
Right.
Should you have done more? Could we have saved our majorities in the House and the Senate this time? I'd be just interested in your analysis of that.
So we had the program that we did in 2018 that resulted in winning these majorities. We realized right after the election of 2018 that we were going to have to do even more. So we did the exact same program that we did plus. We spent...
Raymond, why is that? Why did you think you'd have to do more? Because 2018 was a good year. What made you What made you nervous?
Because in a presidential year, you never know who's going to turn out and
Okay.
who you just never know. Something could happen at a late breaking presidential debate and cause the candidate to drop 20 points. So you can't ever put eggs in a basket in a presidential election year. So
Okay.
what we did, and as I'm sure if you didn't go to all these things, we had these mega events that we raised a lot of money, and we banked it all, and we either gave directly or in-kind gifts, meaning we forgave them, so we paid for stuff for them and all that stuff. $400,000 for the House, $400,000 for the Senate, and over $400,000 for the council as well. So we invested $1.2 million on top of doing all of the ground game that we had done before. The real problem, if you look at where we won in 2018 and where we won in 2020, not a single Democrat in a Democratic district, incumbent Democrat, lost. Nobody.
You're making me feel bad because I didn't run.
And you gave the Republicans that seat. Yes, Patty Cornell says that every single time. But
I wince to hear that, but it's true.
Not one of the LGBTQ Democrats lost, no matter what kind of district they were in.
Really?
Not one state legislator, state representative of color lost, no matter what kind of district they were from. What it is, in the youth, for the folks under 40, none of the incumbents lost.
So why did we not prevail?
Because you have to have a story to tell. And a lot of our candidates or incumbents who were elected in Republican districts last time weren't known. And there was nothing about them that people were able to go, oh yeah, that's that person, because they weren't really known. And COVID really did a number on that. And while there was...
now there's an interesting point, Ray. And I know you've got a commission. I want you to talk about your commission chaired by the remarkable and wonderful Terry Norelli. But, a lot of people say, the Democrats were being very concerned about being COVID compliant, and they weren't out knocking on doors. And the Republicans not so much. And the Republicans knocked on doors, and apparently they gained some benefit of that,
Yes.
which the
And
Republicans
just enough.
didn't, because
Just
they were
enough.
trying to protect people's health.
Yeah. Well, but you could have. And I talked to the Senate president and the speaker last July, and I said, listen, I know the Biden campaign and the congressional campaigns aren't going to do direct door to door. I think you guys in your competitive districts have got to do that. And
You did say that?
Yeah, and I said, I think you've got to teach them how to do it. You knock on the door, you step back 6 feet,
Right.
keep your mask on, do not go inside the house,
Right.
and don't shake their hand. You give
Did
them.
not enough people do that?
I don't know if any House candidate did. 2 of the state senators did it the closing 2 weeks. They just
Of course, it's an easy thing to say,
afterwards.
I'd rather sit here and watch the TV news instead of go out and do door to door, I suppose.
Well, I know, and it's scary. People
Yeah.
are dying, and people have children. They have parents. They have people within their homes that have health conditions, and you don't want to be the person to bring it back to them.
Right.
And that's really been my whole fear. Is like, I don't want to infect somebody else. I can probably handle just about anything, but I don't want to ever be thinking that I then cause somebody
Right,
else to
right.
either die or to be
Right,
gravely
right.
ill.
Yeah.
And so Democrats just didn't want to jeopardize anybody with that. And unfortunately, that wasn't communicated well enough to those independents that overwhelmingly decided to vote Democratic last time, and this time split a little. Or didn't vote at all because they didn't know who the Democratic candidate was because they hadn't heard of them. They didn't knock on the door. We did.
But isn't that something you should have been able to handle to try and get more people to know who they were and that they were out there and they wanted their votes?
We did. Let me tell you about the State Senate District 24, which is the Seabrook, Hampton, Rye
Yep.
Area. Tom Sherman, the incumbent Democratic state senator, up against this millionaire Republican. I was told right after the election that if you add up every dollar that Tom raised and spent, and what the party raised and spent on his behalf in the caucus and the other progressive causes, and everything that his opponent raised and all the people supporting him, each side spent $500,000 each. It was
my God.
$1 million was spent on a singular state senate,
Holy cow.
a state senate seat
Isn't that
in New Hampshire.
astonishing?
$1 million.
Well, they both should have been disqualified because it's obviously insane to spend that kind of money to get a job that pays
Yeah, but
$100
that's,
a year.
That's the seacoast. Everybody's rich out there. The bar's a little higher out there.
But-
Not everybody is, but anyway.
But the Senate Democratic Caucus raised more than they'd ever raised before. I think it was $1.6 million, and they spent it on those campaigns. So there was a lot of mail that went out there, and we're looking at, okay, was the message wrong? Do we change how we talk to voters? And so we're going to be looking at that, and I can't wait to hear from the task force. They're supposed to report out next week.
Are they really?
They have.
How many hearings have they had? Have
They-
they had much response to their search for public input?
They had over 1,000 people provide testimony.
Wow.
1,000. They have had one-on-one meetings with the party. We did like a 40-page report. The coordinated campaign, the House caucus, the Senate caucus, executive council candidates, all different entities. So they've looked at everyone's data, seen everything, and if you really look at roughly 20 people, geographically, in every way, what the diversity of them and their experiences, but many of them highly, highly experienced. When you've got somebody like Ryan Mahoney, Ryan
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Manchester, our former Manchester City chair,
Yep.
chief of staff to Joyce Craig,
Yep.
chief of staff to the House, chief of staff to the Senate, former executive director, ran the House caucus at one point for the election, ran the Senate caucus at one point, was our political director. The guy has got the experience that he's going to instantly know what's real and what's not when someone's, providing information, can ask the tough questions. And you go person by person that's on there, and all of them have held multiple experiences that really, can really bring in what happened, what's truth, and what's happened. So I'm looking for. I've already promised that whatever their recommendations are, that we're going to implement. I trust these folks to be able to take that.
Let me just play devil's advocate here, Raymond, because I am a Buckley supporter, as you know. There's people saying, well, you just appointed the usual insiders that, Terry Norelli, who I think is an awesome person. I just can't gainsay her contributions to our state. But there's that feeling. It was just that you appointed the people that were going to naturally gravitate towards supporting you.
Well, no, I mean, we've got Josh Adigent, who's a two-term
Oh, yeah.
state rep.
He's kind of a
Bernie
bomb thrower,
support,
yeah.
Another gentleman that's on there
Why
that
is he a bomb thrower? Because he likes Bernie? Come on, man.
That would go together, yeah.
and another gentleman that was openly supporting my opponent for chair. But we put people from all over, all young, older. There is a great mixture of folks. Not everybody I wanted was put on there. If everyone that was on my suggested list, probably would have had 60 people. But Terry wanted to be able to have a manageable.
Yeah.
So we've got people from every corner, every community. Very interesting. Manny Espedia, who's great
Yeah.
Latino leader, young guy, floor leader in the House right now.
Yeah.
And he's on there. There's just a great number of terrific folks.
And their initial report's out due next week? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yes.
And then there'll be comments on that and then a final, I presume?
No, this will be their final. They're just going to issue. So they've broken up. I haven't really spoken with them. This is all because I really wanted them to be completely
You wanted-
independent
yeah, okay.
of us.
That's good.
But from what I hear from people is that they've broken up into subcommittees and they're each drafting pieces of the report on the different areas.
Well, I'm a great admirer of Terry Norelli. I had the pleasure of serving in the House when she was the Speaker. She was really good. She's just an incredibly well talented.
She did say to me
caring
about a
person.
month ago, she goes, well, Raymond, if you ever thought that you were going to be able to trick me into running for state party chair at some point, this convinced me never. I was like, oh, it couldn't be this bad. She goes, not saying anything more, but nope. I mean, it's tough. It's tough because a lot of people are certain about things that they think they know that aren't true.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to have a conversation with somebody that's convinced of something, even when you can provide them facts and data that they're incorrect. And that's part of
You
society.
know, but Raymond, it's really devastating that we had this event where we did not keep our majorities at the state level in this year of all years,
Yep.
as was the case in 2010.
Yep, every.
Because it is.
I feel like Lucy,
you know what this
Charlie
is,
Brown and
because
the
it-
football.
Because you know how important these decennial
Yep.
things are, because it's the census, and then we get the the update of our political
Reapportionment,
districts.
redistricting.
Go ahead, Mike.
Bob, the problem is if the Democrats ever do happen to hold majorities, let's say in 2030, we're just going to do a fair commission. We're not going to press the advantage.
You sound
when
kind of
the
sore about
Republicans
that.
always do.
All we need is a fair commission. We don't need any other advantage. All we need is the majority rule.
But that's in our platform, that we support a nonpartisan commission to do the district. We absolutely believe that we would
I understand that,
win.
Raymond, but after decades and decades, can't we at least have 10 years where we just take it? Come on.
We
do the
will win
commission
if we
next
just have
time.
fair district.
That's it.
We don't
That's
need
it,
a
Mike.
rigged election.
We don't
like
need
the
to. We don't need
Republicans.
to gerrymander things. We can win if we can only have 50% plus
No,
one
I
count.
understand. I totally get that, and I believe it, and I agree. But I think that neither one of you guys have never heard the complaint that when Democrats finally do get the gavel, we don't press hard. We're not ruthless enough when we have the power like the Republicans are. I
Well,
wonder what Raymond has to say.
No,
about
that
because
that is
Raymond, you're a
absolutely true.
ruthless guy.
But
I like that.
yeah. It is part of what makes
I
us.
say that with admiration.
Well, there is a sense of we can be shamed. Republicans have no shame. They
that's
just
the answer.
they're
That's
like,
the answer.
yeah, we're rigging the election. What the hell? What are you going to do about it? And it's really crazy. I mean, just remember, we're the state with the phone jamming. And when I tell people around the country what the phone jamming really was, that the guy that went to prison, the lobbyist, Abramoff,
Yeah.
so he went to Mississippi and convinced an Indian tribe casino, that own a casino, to give $30,000 to the New Hampshire Republican Party. Now, why did he do that? Well, apparently, according to phone records, it looks like Karl Rove was masterminding this, calling into the New Hampshire Republican Party with this phone jamming. So what they did is they hired this company out in Idaho to call all of our phone numbers, including the firefighters, because they were doing Rise to the Polls. And so this was before cell phones were prevalent, and we had landlines, and they called and blocked the landlines for the entire day. And their executive director went to prison. The Republican Party were fined and had to give us a couple $100,000. Thank you very much. Donors to the Republican Party for a couple of years. We appreciated that money. But they've never given that $30,000 back. I mean, if we had done anything remotely, they would be screaming bloody blue murder to send that $30,000 back. You stole that from the Native Americans. They could care less. You never see them returning any of their crooked money. Somebody stubs their toe. It's like, okay, we send the money off to the soup kitchen, or we send the money off to the battered women's or shelters, and we immediately turn it over. They could care less, just could care less.
Raymond, on your many years of great leadership of the Democratic Party, and they have been great, I think. A little hiccup this time, but you've answered that. And all of that, I mean, to me, it's a source of kind of sadness on my part that we don't have a responsible opposition party anymore. We don't. I mean, I just can't believe. I'm indulging a little bit of optimism in this impeachment trial that we're going to do better than we did in the first impeachment trial. That's I think a given. We may do better than we did in the first vote, but
Bob,
respond to me on
a
this.
Democratic state representative from the town of Merrimack tweeted out, "I wonder who else from New Hampshire went down to the attack on the Capitol other than the police chief of Troy, New Hampshire."
I believe that was Representative Wendy Thomas.
No, she's running. It's Rosemary Rung.
Oh yes, that's right.
And by simply saying, "I wonder who else from New Hampshire went down to the attack other than," because we knew that the police chief of Troy went.
Yeah,
She got removed from her committee
that's
and
right. That's right.
as punishment
That's right.
for simply saying, "I wonder if anyone from New Hampshire was complicit in the terrorist attack on the Capitol, where people died, where police officers have lost their fingers, lost eyes, I mean, the head trauma that there are a dozen law enforcement, so far the Blue Party, and they're like, oh, they'll get over it. I mean, it is
Raymond,
disgusting.
remember Benghazi?
Yeah, exactly.
Remember Benghazi when,
Yeah.
we had how many years? They're still investigating Benghazi, aren't they?
Yeah, it is. Their hypocrisy has no end, and see, that's really. Here's what happens to me, on that day, on also any of these big days of just horrific. I try to think about, when I go back when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, when I fell in love with politics. What are those second and third and fourth grade kids looking at? If I was that age now, would I really aspire to be involved in politics or to hold public office? If I heard that a state rep, because I wanted to run, little fourth graders in New Hampshire, as you know, all get dragged up to the State House, get the tour, and I was in my little Cub Scout uniform. We came around the corner and I saw those 400 seats there, and I was like, so you're telling me 400 people from all across New Hampshire, factory workers, lawyers, retirees, college students, whatever, all come here to try to do their very best to make New Hampshire better. That blew my mind. I was so excited. I was like, that's where I want to be. I just thought that was like the most incredible thing.
And you were there.
Now, you've got those kids that would be, well, if you call out a terrorist attack on the U.S. Capitol, you get pulled off your committee. I mean, this is not stuff that happened in New Hampshire 40, 50, even 30 years ago.
That's right.
In the beginning part of when I served versus the legislature today, they don't even resemble like it's the same body. The behavior of the Republicans, the people that are in leadership positions are the sort of people that when I first got elected in the 80s and served in the 90s, that would have been put in the back row on the worst committees and just dealt with by the Republicans. Instead, now they're the speaker. They're the majority leader. They're the majority. It is unbelievable what's happening in New Hampshire, and thankfully the voters are catching on. And we're all going to live long enough to see New Hampshire as a Democratic state. It's not that far along, but we need to remember because it's one thing to get, it's another to keep. And once we do turn Democratic, we're still going to have to fight every election. And we've got to remember these times and their behavior in office, their behavior as candidates, and make sure that we continually work just as hard, no matter how blue New Hampshire ends up being, because it'll still always be a fight. And you look at New England, okay, 6 states of New England. Do you know which state of the 6 states has the greatest percentage of electing Democratic governors over the last 30 years?
You're not going to tell me New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, we have elected Democratic governors 70% of the time.
No kidding.
Massachusetts,
That's true.
30.
We had a great, couple.
But they elect some
Vermont,
reasonable
50.
Republicans
Vermont,
governor.
50% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rhode Island, Connecticut. We actually do better than any
That's a really
other.
good, that's a really
other
good
than
statistic
for electing,
to be able to use. Thank you.
And when you look at that sort of thing, and
Raymond, can can I jump in and ask? You know, we've had these successive waves on the right wing, the Tea Party, this latest Trump thing. We in New Hampshire specifically have the Free Staters that I think still exist. Can you talk a little bit about, are we reaping some of the benefits of those wonderful programs here in New Hampshire, as far as you know, your Republican colleagues just not being what they used to be?
The current majority leader of the New Hampshire House moved to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project. He's the majority leader in the New Hampshire House. And Bob, give a good ad for that book.
Folks, this book, I just got the last copy at the Bookery in Elm Street. And I just heard about it today, and I went right down and got it. A libertarian walks into a bar. It's a great title. You know what it's about, Mike? Have you heard about this?
I have not.
Well, Raymond's going to let me promo this a bit. This book has become quite a hit. It's about Grafton, New Hampshire. The author's from Vermont, but he's about Grafton, New Hampshire. And that began, you know, New Hampshire's been a free state project for quite a while.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of them serving in, you know, in the House. Some run as Democrats, and I think it's to their advantage. But in Grafton, New Hampshire, a little town with only one paved road, they decided to go up there and get rid of these niggling government regulations. One of which was, you know, some zoning rules about, you know, don't feed the bears.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. So they stopped feeding. So they said, okay, we want to feed the bears. So people started hanging donuts out in their decks. And the bears, you know, they're not dumb. They like donuts. They like donuts. And they came in and they really took over the donuts. And now there's people that can't go out and enjoy their decks because the bears. Am I doing justice to this? I haven't read this book, but
It is an amazing book.
it's an amazing book.
And-
It's a huge hit. And it goes on much beyond that. But the bears. And then apparently it also involves the Corbin Reservation in Croydon, where they used to have a private game preserve for the well-heeled. And then the 1938 hurricane threw and blew down. This cracks me. Blew down some of the fences, and so some of the wild boars and the other exotic game animals they brought from Europe escaped, and they mated with the locals. And now we have more aggressive.
But it's important for people to read this book and know this story, because this is exactly what they want to do to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And it is a safe assumption that if you're voting for a Republican, you're voting for someone who is a free stater or is enabled by a free stater. And they will support each other.
Yeah.
And they've got money and they want power. And what they want to do is live this fantasy world that is not real, where that you don't have to have any government, and it's just everyone is left on their own to do whatever they want to do. That's not what the Mayflower Compact was about.
That's not.
That was not what the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution was about.
Absolutely.
Or even the Magna Carta. I mean, our even Christian doctrine is about taking care of other people.
Well, Christian doctrine, most of all, I would think, do unto the least of us.
I get a real kick out of these guys that they're all independent and they want to be able to do whatever they want to do. But when there's a fire, they wonder where the fire truck is.
Yeah.
When they go to work, they drive on a road.
Well, that's
they
the
don't
classic
go back
example, of
roads.
course, Mike. It certainly is. Raymond, I'm really looking forward to read this book.
You're going to love it. You're going to love it.
I guess it's a huge success.
I'm going to look for it, Bob. I'm sorry to hear you got the last copy. I'll have to go to.
Well, I'm going to share it with you.
I'll go.
I'll
on
tear
Amazon.
through it, and then
Amazon's
it'll be
got
yours. So, Raymond, you've done yeoman work for the Democratic Party, and the success, you just can't gainsay it. What you've done and accomplished is awesome. Now you're running for another term. What's your agenda for your new term as chair? What are you going to do new and different or exciting, or is it just going to be continuation, or what's the plan for your newest?
After the 1997 city elections, I looked around and I was like, what the heck? I didn't really say heck, but I'll say that for your audience.
Yeah, we're like
We had just reelected Ray Wazork to a 5th term. Republicans were in the majority on the Board of Aldermen. They were the majority on the school board. And I said, this is Manchester. And I then ran and got elected the city chair in January of '98. And as you recall, the very next election, we defeated Wazork, and we elect Democratic majorities on the school board and the Board of Aldermen. While we still have more Democrats, we have the mayor, and we have more Democrats than there are Republicans, and the Board of Aldermen and the school board, they're still not doing, but there are people on there that need to not be there. And they are not, this is a crisis time in America. It's a crisis time in New Hampshire, a crisis time in Manchester.
crisis time of the nation.
And they are proving themselves unworthy of the time, that they are not thinking through, they're not doing the work that they need to do. And I think that if we can replace a few of these blowhards on both boards, that we can have the city that our ancestors came here with the promise that it would be. Manchester really was a calling, almost like the Statue of Liberty, in the sense of bringing people to fulfill your American dream.
Yeah.
Generations after generations of factory workers from Canada, from Greece, from Ireland, from all
Everywhere,
over, all
yeah.
came
Yep.
to Manchester to begin that journey to live the American dream. And this city is hurting. Our schools are not where they need to be.
Yeah.
And we're not competing with the folks in Concord and Nashua. These students are going to be competing with people in Beijing and in Moscow and all across the world, and that we need to have the very best of education. And there's ways of doing that if you've got thoughtful people that are willing to work together and really willing to move the city forward. I talk about this a lot. When I was on the Board of Aldermen, I got elected in Ward 8 Alderman, by the way. Mike.
Okay.
when I was an alderman we were
I
given.
certainly can respect the difficulty in getting that done, Raymond.
I'm just teasing. So we were given a report paid for by the Chamber of Commerce that Manchester's future depended on 3 things happening. One, the airport had to be completely rebuilt and modernized so that it could handle increased traffic.
That we can get checked done.
We needed the state of New Hampshire. There was not a civic center in the state of New Hampshire.
Done.
Now, and we did it on our own. The taxpayers of Manchester pay about $100 a year, each one of us, for that civic center, because we are the only city of 100,000 people that built a civic center alone. Usually there was agreement with, like in Portland, it wasn't Portland, it was Cumberland County, so it was the entire county paid into. So people of Hooksett celebrate, people of Auburn celebrate, people of Bedford, no, they don't pay a dime. That is all on the backs of the property taxpayers. But we did it because we were told that's what it's going to take to move Manchester forward. The third leg was commuter rail. If we can connect with Boston through commuter rail, we will be a hub of all of these high-tech folks that are making a good amount of money, that have a lot to give to this community, that could jump on, the train and go down to wherever, by the Route 128 where they have all the high-tech stuff, or right into Boston.
Or let me say, people down there can jump on the train and come to Manchester.
They can jump on the train and come to our airport,
And to our downtown.
down to our downtown,
And to our Midyard. And
to our
high-tech
civic
places.
center.
Yep.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm so excited about Pete Buttigieg being the Secretary of Transportation. Not only am I excited that a friend of mine is the Secretary of Transportation,
Yes.
but I'm excited that almost every one of his top staff persons either worked in New Hampshire or have had some New Hampshire connection. So we are,
Well, let's not ignore the fact that our new president,
yes,
the
loves
Honorable
the train.
Joseph Biden, for years when he was a senator from Delaware, starting at age 29, I think.
Yeah.
Took the Amtrak,
Never
pretty
lived
much
in
every
Washington.
day.
Went back and forth.
So we got a real strong rail advocacy at the very top, including the new
Absolutely.
Secretary of Transportation.
So,
and I'm very excited about it.
I think that we're going to do it. Now, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get ourselves together, and we're going to have to win back the governor's race next year and the executive council, because the governor and council can block federal funds coming into New Hampshire.
And they've done it.
They've done it.
And it's disgraceful,
It
but they've
is a
done it.
disgrace. So, for the greater Manchester area and, economically, most of New Hampshire, we've got to have that third leg of progress.
And we do.
And
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because that's a major thing for me.
It is. So we've got to have good aldermen. We've got to have good school board members. We've got to keep our good mayor. And we have got to make sure that we get better people on the executive council, and and I'll tell you, I don't know if you've noticed, but Cindy Warmington has hit the ground running. She was the new executive council.
Oh,
District
she's
2.
great, but she's only one of 4.
There's one of 4, but she's tough, and she's smart, and she's strong, and she's not going to get bullied. She's not going to get outsmarted, certainly not by Sununu
No, but
or those
yeah,
folks.
okay.
And she is going to lay out a record that clearly explains what responsible government is about, and that what these councilors should be doing. And it's going to be done in a way that's very understandable, because a lot of people don't pay any attention to the executive council. And she is determined that the people of New Hampshire are going to know what's going on in that council.
Right, right. Well, very good. Mike? Look at
Well,
you.
you do mention something. The executive council, we talked about every time. I watch Fox News a lot because I try to understand my conservative brother. And that's really all that the Republicans talk about with regard to the past election. Well, we turned 2 state state houses, and I know which 2 they are. No one else in the world does, and it hurts. But it's a question again, Raymond, about down ballot voting. I mean, it was a presidential election. Was it a drop off of participation, or what was it message, or do you want to wait to get the report before you speculate?
I think it was all of that. I also think that we were convinced that our nominee for governor was going to get in the mid-40s. And if you look back at the history of when a Republican governor is running for re-election, or a Democratic, if you look at John Lynch's numbers, when they're getting over 66% of the vote, they bring along the Council, the House, and the Senate. I did not see Sununu getting that high of a vote. I underestimated.
Well, why didn't you? I mean, here he is, enjoying tremendous ratings because of his, his earned TV mediator with Dr. Chan every week on Channel 9.
Because I was looking at the numbers for Biden and for Shaheen and for Chris and for Annie. I was like, these voters are so smart. They can see through the bull with Trump and all these other characters that are running for office. Surely they can see through Sununu. And what it is they didn't. And
They certainly did not.
we've looked at a lot of data post-election. And what happened is that that Trump poisoned every level of the election. The people of New Hampshire were terrified of Donald Trump being reelected. So, and they were still surprised that he won the first time. So that was the deciding factor for a large number of people that voted for the Democratic delegation, because they figured they had to have Democrats in Washington to try to put a check on Trump's behavior.
Okay.
And
I'll buy that.
And so
analysis.
that piece, because Trump was so horrible, and people were scared to death of what he was doing with COVID and other things.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, Chris Sununu, like every other incumbent governor in the nation, every incumbent got reelected. They all benefited because just by not scaring the bejesus out of the voters, they looked responsible. Mm-hmm. And even though if in normal times, if the voters of New Hampshire were able to process what Sununu did by grabbing that $1.2 billion, unprecedented, no governor in New Hampshire ever completely brush aside the executive council, completely brush aside the legislature, say, this is my money, I'll determine how it goes, and to hell with all of you. In normal times, that if Trump was not there, this would have been a scandal of magnitude that Sununu never could have survived.
It's an interesting theory.
But they could not. People were so scared of Trump that they had to cling. They clung to their governor, whoever in every state, doesn't matter which party, as the person that's protecting them from Trump. And
but Trump, but Sununu's, as Dan Feltus kept saying endlessly and endlessly, he was a Trump supporter through and through, and that did not register.
It did not, and we looked at the data with that. They didn't believe it. The data that I've looked at, that those swing voters, those people that voted for Shaheen and Biden and Sununu, they thought that Sununu was saying that he was a Trump person to protect them from Trump, because they knew they figured that Trump would come after.
Who knew?
They would come after New Hampshire, and
that.
he was trying. I looked at it. I was like, that's a whole level of sophistication that I did not expect. And so we looked at that, and right now his numbers are still saying, but once we get over this hump and we get back to normal, where people are living their lives in some level of normalcy.
May it be soon.
May it be soon. That's when they're going to really take a hard look at Christopher T. Sununu. And I don't think what they see is what they're going to want. And so,
well, I hope you're right. I certainly hope you're right.
He
has the benefit of a certain superficial geniality, which his father never had.
Yes,
put it mildly.
Just to put it mildly.
Yeah, and he's benefited from that. And as I say, all the earned media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my gosh, I've been alerted that we should really pay attention to his budget address tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some really, really alarming stuff in there. I'm certainly going to tune in.
Well, if we can get the Democrats to be able to figure out how to attend the House, we should be able to, to do some responsible budgeting.
Yeah. So I just want to come back. We're almost done here, Raymond. It's so much fun having you here. I'm just delighted you joined us. Where is the Republican Party that you once knew? I mean, is the Republican Party, is it just ready to be taken out to the yard and disposed of, or can we have a responsible? I mean, a party that argues for we should be worried about the deficit. They're not worried about the deficit. We should have free trade. They don't care about free trade anymore. They don't care about any things they used to stand for. All they care about is not offending Trump. I can't believe we've got to this point in this country.
And you can take it even further than even policy or behavior, just interacting with other humans.
Yeah.
When Chris Spiro was the chair of the party, of New Hampshire Democratic Party, and I was his executive director, we were down the street from the Republican Party. Leanne Steiner was the executive director, the Republican state rep from Ward 1. I was executive director, Democratic state rep from Ward 8, the other end of the city. The best end, right, Mike?
You know it, the great Ward 8.
And I'd go over there and eat lunch with them. When Chris and Rona Sharma would ride together when they're doing joint interviews or something like that. My counterpart won't even be on TV with me. It's the idea of
it's terrible.
Of anyone
it's just terrible.
Working together, being pleasant, being respectful. They just have blown that all up. Everybody is the enemy. Everybody is the enemy with them, and it is. It really has brung out the worst in people.
It has.
They're not interested in solving issues.
I remember when Jimmy Carter was running for president, he said, we deserve a president as good as the American people.
Mm-hmm.
And with him, we got one. But now we decided the American people
I think
maybe
we got one last term, too.
Yeah.
We're almost at the end here. I can't resist. This thing with Jennifer Horn banning the Lincoln Project, you've been following that? You got any comments on that? I mean, I was kind of interested that she became an anti-Trump Republican like George Conway. Whoever heard of what Kellyanne Conway is thinking these days? I'd be interested. But what do you got any thoughts on that? You're a pretty outspoken guy. That's why I asked.
Jennifer Horn, the former Republican State Party chair here in New Hampshire, told the Lincoln Project last week that she wanted $250,000 cash up front,
$40,000 a month.
$40,000 every month, her own TV show, and certain spots on other shows on the radio and whatnot.
And
$40,000
I
a
thought
month.
this was kind of a volunteer operation.
$40,000 a month, Bob. That's $480,000 a year in New Hampshire. And
She should have applied to the NRA.
I looked at that, and my first response is, I can't even imagine asking for that in any circumstance. I cannot imagine. Now, that must be what somebody else must be getting with that organization.
Well, I would think so. There's gotta be some template for that.
Exactly. And it just brings me back to the phone jamming. You know, Alan Raymond was the consultant that went to prison that organized the phone jamming. And he wrote this amazing book on how to rig the election. If you haven't read it, you need to get it. You can get it on online, the used copies and stuff like that. I don't think they're in bookstores anywhere. But in that book, he goes through his life in politics. And what he essentially says is that he was a whore, in the sense that he would work for whoever would pay him the most. He didn't care what their policy, they were pro-choice, anti-choice, didn't matter. Didn't matter what their behavior,
Well, I
background,
can think
everything.
of a number of people that can fit in that pigeonhole.
But that's what has infected every level of even the people that we think are the good people have that greed. That's their common denominator, and that's why every day Republicans are becoming Democrats. The people that just can't put up with that are leaving, and it is
Oh, may it be so.
phenomenal.
May it be
It is
so.
phenomenal. Well, when you look at Republicans, when we were younger, did Democrats even bother to run in Peterborough, New London, Antrim, Concord, even Hanover? These were all Republican strongholds a generation or two ago. Now, there's no chance that a Republican's going to get elected. No chance. 3 Democrats got elected out of Antrim. All 3 seats, Democratic. Peterborough, they haven't elected a Republican now in Peterborough in 20 years. You know, you look at New London, Democratic. It is mind-boggling.
Well, we got work left to do, which
Yes.
you'll do as the next
Exactly.
chairman of the Democratic Party.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank you, Ray, for coming down and being on our show. It's been a long time. We really enjoy it when you're here. You're outspoken, you're fearless, and you're informed.
And I'm
So-
ready to write a Farley Committee check.
I'll talk to him about that off air.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
You try
Mike.
to get away, it just keeps pulling you back in, huh?
Hey, Mike, we'll be back with you, I assume, on Skype. I hope the
I
day
can't
will come
wait
when
to
you
get
can
together
feel
with you
comfortable
guys.
being
I
back
really
here.
can't.
But we'll be on with you next week. That'll be February 17th, I believe. And we'll have the Alexa Cost from the Public Health Department on to talk about where we're at on beating both the
Excellent.
opioid
Return of the
and the COVID in this city. Raymond, thank you for
Great,
joining
thank
us.
you.
It was a great pleasure to have
Great
you
to
here.
be with you.
And we'll have you back.
Great talking
Okay,
with you,
folks.
gentlemen.
Good night, everybody.
Stay safe.
Stay on and watch these impeachment hearings. They're